As we near the end of 2024, the yearly question poses itself: will the number of countries next year be the same as this year? Throughout the world, there are various independence movements trying to reach independence, and this happens mostly in Europe, Africa, a little bit in Asia, and not so much in America. In this video, we are going to focus on 4 particular movements in 4 particular regions that I think have a pretty big chance, or at least a reasonable one, in potentially achieving independence in the near future. Who knows, maybe next year. Guys, I just posted another fully exclusive video on Patreon. I'm gonna be posting them every month, and this is in addition to the other exclusive content that I post, the early access videos, the behind the scenes looks, and everything else. So if you want to be a part of that community and access that content, make sure to join there as well. Now, it's always unlikely for new countries to emerge, and even the ones that I'm going to talk about are kind of unlikely. I know this kind of contradicts what I just said, but these are 4 examples of regions that could qualify as their own countries if the possibility to be independent presented itself, because they have their own identity, their own culture, their own means of self-sustenance, one or the other, among other things. So let's take a look at them and find out why that is the case. There's a large list that we could choose from for this video, but I chose these 4. They are Rojava in North Syria, Tigray in North Ethiopia, North Yemen in Yemen, and also West Papua, which is in its western half, now a part of Indonesia. But first, let me take a quick second to thank the sponsor of today's video, MyHeritage. Now, I just received this package for them, and I'm gonna open it right now, because what is in this is a DNA test kit. Now, I'm going to be doing this test, and I'm gonna send it over back to them. Then I'm going to receive the results, and I'm going to show you where I come from, what my DNA shows. I'm very excited to find out. The way that it works is pretty simple. I'm going to take this cotton swab right here, put it on the inside of my cheek, put it back in a jar, mail it back to them, and then we're going to find out the results. In about 2 seconds, it's going to be a few days later, and I'm going to have the results. So I'm going to clap my hands and sort of time travel into the future. And we are back. It is a few days, a couple weeks later, and we just received the results via email for the DNA test. I'm very excited to see it, and overall I'm really excited to partner with MyHeritage because they have such a huge database where you can explore millions, or I think even billions of records to try and find information about your genealogy. And also a quick disclaimer about the DNA test before I show you the results. They have a commitment never to sell their genetic data to anyone. So if you ever wanted to do a test but thought, I don't want my DNA being sold around the market, you don't need to worry, they will never do that. So now let's take a look at the results. I'm really excited to see them. I have them on the screen over there, so I'm gonna react live to the results. So I'm just gonna press this. Okay, here we go. And okay, like 40% Iberian. That's pretty normal, you know, I'm Portuguese, so that was the expected result. But 30% Northern European is really interesting. I can see that, like, knowing a little bit about my family's background. And then 10% Italian, 6% North African. That kind of explains everybody that keeps commenting saying that I look like Mohamed Salah from Liverpool, which I guess is a little bit true. And maybe they're, you know, maybe we're like very distant cousins. You never know. It's also cool because on the MyHeritage website, you can go and, in addition to the DNA matches results, you get genetic matches. So you can kind of see people that your DNA matched with and that you are potentially related to. I partnered with them, so you can use my discount code and get free shipping plus a 30-day free trial. Let's start with Tigray, which flies this super cool flag of a red field with a yellow triangle on the left and a tilted yellow star to its right. Hope everyone is okay out there. Although this is the flag of the region, not necessarily the secessionist movement, but maybe if the region would become its own country, they would keep the flag. The Tigray region, located in northern Ethiopia, holds significant historical and cultural importance. It borders Eritrea to the north and Sudan to the west. It's home to a population that predominantly speaks Tigrinya and identifies with a distinct heritage from the rest of Ethiopia. The region's rich history includes the ancient Christian kingdoms of Africa and archaeological landmarks like Aksum, which is believed by some to be the point where the Ark of Covenant is held. The roots of the Tigray independence movement trace back several decades and are influenced by both historical and social aspects. The Tigray People's Liberation Front emerged in the 1970s during Ethiopia's civil conflict as a liberation group opposing the authoritarian regime. They initially only sought autonomy for Tigray and advocated for broader changes within Ethiopia. After the regime fell in 1991, they became a prominent political faction within Ethiopia and even were a part of the coalition government. However, as time went on, their political clout kind of faded away, and by 2018 they were completely pushed aside by the new government. The aspiration for independence in Tigray is driven by a mix of cultural identity, political marginalization, and the impact of recent conflicts, which escalated with the pushing away that they have experienced since 2018. And because Tigrayans have always viewed themselves as their own people, with their own history, cultural traditions, language, this all became exacerbated, and the wish for independence kind of came back when they lost political influence within Ethiopia. Tensions reached a peak with the outbreak of the Tigray War in 2020, which further fueled the call for independence as many Tigrayans blamed the Ethiopian government. Currently, the conflict seems to have stopped, but the support for independence by Tigrayans still remains. Ethiopia would, of course, try to stop it again if they tried, and even the neighboring Eritrea would probably put their hand into the conflict. International recognition would also be difficult because a solid Ethiopia is seen as key in stability of East Africa, especially considering that Somalia is right next to them, and that's already a pit of instability in the region. Although the successful breakaway and de facto independence of Somaliland might serve as inspiration and a good example for Tigray to follow. So now let's move on to another potential country, Rojava. And I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing the name properly. It kind of sounds like a Spanish name, even though it's in Syria. Their displayed flag varies. Sometimes it's a horizontal tricolor of yellow, red, and green. Sometimes a yellow field with the local symbol in the center displaying a Kurdish sun. Rojava is officially known as the Autonomous Administration of Northern and East Syria, and it's a de facto autonomous region in Syria today. The region emerged as a significant self-governing entity during the Syrian conflict, capitalizing on the power vacuum that arose when the Syrian government forces withdrew in 2012. Its development is deeply tied to the Kurdish political movement, though it is also home to various ethnic groups including Arabs, Syrians, and Turkmen, among many others. And the movement that calls for independence of Rojava is tied to the global or at least regional movement to establish a Kurdish sovereign state in the region. The Kurdish people, one of the world's largest stateless ethnic groups, have long sought cultural, political, and territorial recognition across parts of Syria, Turkey, Iraq, and Iran. And while surrounding countries are against the Free Kurdistan in fear of losing their own territories, a Rojava country that isn't focused on uniting all Kurds, but just happens to be majority Kurdish, might be a halfway compromise on both sides. Their desire for independence is driven by a combination of self-defense, cultural preservation, and the aspiration for a political system that embraces what they call democratic confederalism, in contrast with the very authoritarian regimes that surround them in the Middle East region as a whole. But despite these aspirations, the possibility of them reaching independence remains pretty small. While the region has shown remarkable resilience and has some degree of self-governance, its long-term viability as an independent state is uncertain due to geopolitical factors. Key players in the Syrian conflict wouldn't be too happy with it, namely Turkey or even Russia. Not to mention Syria itself, which has slowly regained control of their country's territory over the past 10 years. Then a free West Papua. Flying a horizontally striped flag of blue and white with a red stripe on the left side upon which rests a white 5-pointed star. Free Papua is a name that is given to the movement that seeks to establish independence for the western part of the Papua Island, currently under the administration of Indonesia, and which is divided into 6 Indonesian provinces. The movement consists of 3 elements: a disparate group of armed units, each with limited territorial control, with no single commander, several groups in the territory that conduct demonstrations and protests, and a small group of leaders based abroad that raise awareness of issues in the territory while striving for international support for independence. The desire for self-rule comes from various differences that exist on a local level when compared to Indonesia, as well as a pretty big dissatisfaction towards first the Dutch, which ruled it from a colonial point of view, and then now Indonesia. After the Dutch left in 1963, Indonesia became independent, and West Papua went along with it. The process has been a key source of contention, with Papuans asserting that it didn't reflect the will of the majority and was effectively a forced annexation. Many locals feel that Indonesia doesn't represent their interests, and that despite the region's wealth in natural resources like gold, copper, and gas, many Papuans experience poverty and underdevelopment compared to the more prosperous areas of Indonesia, which are, according to them, benefiting from these Papuan resources. Efforts from the Indonesian government to suppress these movements and local dissatisfaction have often resulted in police brutality, repression, and attempted control of civil and political movements, which have only fueled the local desire for independence a little more. But it doesn't help that the local independence movements are so flimsy and unorganized. The other half of the island is already, as we know, an independent country called Papua New Guinea. One is left to wonder whether, if independence was reached by the West, a single united Papua country would then come from it. But it's very unlikely that they're going to reach independence. If they are, they need the support of Papua New Guinea, and most of all, they need to get themselves together and organize so that this goal is actually achievable. And finally, North Yemen. I would say that this is perhaps the most likely on our list. They don't really have a national flag. In the thumbnail, I used this one, which depicts a red field with a white curved sword and a star. This was the flag of the Kingdom of Yemen in 1918 to 1970, which actually took up these exact same borders and can be seen as a starting point and justification for the existence of a sovereign North Yemen. Historically, this area was a part of the Kingdom of Yemen, established in 1918 following the fall of the Ottoman Empire, ruled by the Zaydi Imamate. The kingdom maintained a strong tribal and religious identity centered around Shia Islam, distinct from the predominantly Sunni southern areas. This historical division that's common along the Islamic world laid the groundwork for the division between North and South. The Kingdom of Yemen persisted until 1962, when a revolution transformed it into the Yemen Arab Republic, with the eventual unification with southern Yemen into a single unified country in 1990. As the unified government became more and more Sunni dominated, Northerners started feeling marginalized from a political but also an economic point of view. And the Houthi movement emerged to try and face off militarily with the central government. In 2014, they launched a military campaign and captured key cities, taking advantage of a weakened central government. The move set off an internal conflict within Yemen involving various factions, including the Yemeni government, other southern secessionists and tribal groups, while also drawing in regional powers such as Saudi Arabia and Iran, and this is lasting until today. The region is de facto independent, but its development into a real country that is recognized by others is blocked by the conflict. They would have to first reach peace, get Yemen to agree on their independence as part of the deal, and have Saudi Arabia and Iran sign on as well. The Houthis would then face the challenge of transforming themselves from a militant group into a legitimate and functioning government. They would also struggle a lot with development. Yemen is already a pretty poor country, but North Yemen is particularly poor and lacks pretty much any natural resource. So the development of the country, when it was established, would have to count a lot on foreign investment and aid. So those are 4 regions and independence movements that could potentially transition into becoming their own countries in 2025, or at least in the near future. All of these are always unlikely. Understanding where they are, why they want to break away, and how serious those independence movements are, plus understanding how unlikely or likely their success might be. Because while most of them are unlikely, I think they make good cases for establishing their own countries because of their unique identities and cultures. I would love to do a part 2 of this, so if you have any other regions and movements that you think could reach independence or at least start moving towards it in 2025, let me know in the comments. And also, what do you think about these? Do you think they will succeed? Do you think they should become their own countries? Tell me what you think. Thank you so much to my patrons for supporting me directly. Make sure to join there if you want to access all the exclusive content that I told you about at the start of the video. Either way, thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe if you want to catch future videos, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge. And just a reminder, this video was sponsored by MyHeritage. If you want to order your own DNA test kit and experience all the really cool things MyHeritage has to offer, just use my code KNOWLEDGE and get a free shipping and a 30-day free trial. So, the Movement Cup today is a police officer, but he's not, it looks like he's like going to arrest someone, but no, because when you turn it around, he's just watering his flowers. Throughout the world, there are there's a very big fly in here.